CitizenFM Abuja. Now we be the voice of the people. CitizenFM Abuja. Now we be the voice of the people.
Yes, we are Citizen FM 93.7. We are the voice of the people, the soul of the nation. It's 9 minutes past 9. This is the Zuma Show on Citizen FM, and this is the talking point segment where we get to interview someone of interest that, you know, will help the citizens to understand better how to be a part of a greater nation. And now, invention is the most important product of man's creative brain, and the ultimate purpose is the complete mastery of mind over the material world. And yes, I just put that in front. Electricity is one of the most important aspects of our lives today. Before electricity, we didn't know what we were missing, but now we do have it. And sometimes we don't. In Nigeria, at the inception of this government, one of the promises that was given was that, well, fairly better electricity supply. And in that guise and under that light, an agency was created to ensure that people in the rural areas were given an opportunity to also have access to electricity. I don't know about you, but when I do have electricity in my house, it gives me the impression that I can move mountains, I can change the world. You know, when there is power, there is nothing impossible to the mind for me. And that's when I actually remember that there's a whole lot more to be done. However, constant electricity in Nigeria today still seems a bit of a challenge to have, as in when we talk about constant. But besides that, there are parts of Nigeria today, at some point, before the inception of this administration, that didn't even know what it meant to have electricity and did not have an idea some of the things they could do with it. Some of them had electricity in the past, and then as the time went on, they didn't have access to electricity anymore. This morning, I am being joined by Dr. Sanusi Mohammed Ohiare, who's an economist with special interest in energy. He has a Master's of Science degree in Energy Studies with specialization in energy finance. He also holds a PhD in Rural Energy Development. Dr. Ohiare is an Executive Director, Electrification Fund, Rural Electrification Fund under the Rural Electrification Agency. He's also in politics as a technocrat. We'll take a look at that much later, okay? Dr. Ohiare is a member of the All Progressives Congress and was the Assistant Secretary Election Committee at the APC National Convention. He is also a member of the International Association of Energy Economics, Lagos Oil Club, Society for Petroleum Engineers, and Energy Institute of the United Kingdom. A very good morning to you, Dr. Ohiare.
Good morning, Kemi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, and good to have you in the studio. Dr. Ohiare, let's start with the fact that energy, I think we should make it electricity. Electricity is one of the most important things that we can have, especially for a nation that is that looks to improve its industrialization and all that. And it still seems like a far cry to having constant electricity in Nigeria today. What exactly are the challenges?
Okay, so just to buttress your point, it's not one of the most important things to have. It's actually the most important commodity to have today in any economy. This is because it affects our lives across board. If you're at home, if you're at work, for the economy, socially, everywhere, it's important for us to have energy and electricity. Well, talking about the challenges, I would like to divide this into two parts.
Okay.
We have challenges associated with the larger grid, which we call the national grid, which is divided into distribution companies. For instance, we're in Abuja. We're under the service of Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. That's a much larger problem. Different from what I do day to day. What I do is focus on off-grid, rural electrification.
Okay.
I'll just talk a bit about the grid and then go off-grid as well.
Yes, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so the history of electricity or electrification in Nigeria dates back to 1981 when the government decided they wanted to electrify all the 774 local government headquarters as part of the targets at the time. They were able to do around 600, I think, before 2005 when the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, which sought to introduce reforms and regulation and private sector into the system. Mind you, remember back then it used to be a vertically integrated system called the Nigeria Electric Power Authority.
Yeah, NEPA. It's still NEPA to me until we have constant power.
So NEPA was in charge of everything from generation of electricity to transmission to distribution to rural electrification and the likes. So the problems associated with NEPA, it was too bogus. It couldn't reach and scale up as quickly as we wanted. Issues around corruption, issues around not having reforms and not regulating itself properly, issue around pricing and the tariff. Now, tariff and pricing is still an issue. However, what we're told then when the act was being enacted was that if you unbundle the system and you introduce regulations, you would have private players come in, invest. You have banks and commercial lenders come in and invest. Everything will be done based on the forces of demand and supply.
Similar to what we have in the telecommunications sector.
Exactly. So the plan was to do this, and we introduced the regulator, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, to regulate the system. They are supposed to be in charge of, pricing, regulations, and, ensuring fairness between the consumers and, the
service providers.
Service providers, all of those things. However, pricing is still a problem.
Okay.
Within the sector. What we hear from the distribution companies and the generators is we are not yet there in terms of having a cost-reflective tariff.
Okay.
Right? And the regulator is in charge of sort of adjusting the tariff based on the dynamics of the economy.
Okay.
So, for instance, to generate electricity, you have inputs that goes into generating electricity. You have, for instance, if it's a gas-fired thermal plant, you have to pay for gas. So you have a different company that is a gas supplier. You have to pay for the generation. You have a different company who has a contract with the gas supplier but generates the electricity, from his plants.
Okay.
Then the transmission company is also there to transmit. All of this have costs, right? We have the distribution company who ultimately distributes to your household and then, tries to charge a tariff that covers the entire value chain.
Okay.
So what they are saying is that this tariff that is currently being charged doesn't cover even the cost of them generating, a kilowatt of power.
Okay. Now, thank you for educating us on that. And I don't know if you want to continue on that trajectory, but I know that somewhere at some point your agency was birthed.
Yes.
What was the idea behind birthing the Rural Electrification Agency?
So the idea was looking at the system and knowing very well that then we only had about 51% of the country, as at 2005, that was covered by the grid, the national grid, in terms of the infrastructure. The government, and if you're selling just 51% of our power supply to the private sector, you needed to make provisions for the remaining 49% of the country that didn't even have any infrastructure at all.
Okay.
So the agency was created, the Rural Education Agency was created to take care of this 49% people that don't have access to the grid at all, that are in rural communities and still need this power.
Okay, now, and still need this power. But the challenge is you have people who are on the grid who need this power but don't have the power.
Exactly. So
what does your agency do for that, that?
So our agency is also allowed to intervene in such areas. We call them the underserved areas.
Okay.
So those that don't have at all are called the unserved. Right, so they don't have power at all. But those within the grid that still have, they don't have it, constantly, are called the underserved. So we still intervene.
Okay, and what sort of interventions are made possible? I give you an example.
Yeah.
I stay somewhere in the outskirts, and sometimes for 5 days on end, we don't have power, but we're on the grid.
Okay, so the kind of intervention we can, provide in such cases, because the grid, the way the grid is the way it is, you don't have control over the supply because the supply is centrally distributed.
Okay.
We have a system operator under the Transmission Company of Nigeria that decides what goes where to which disco based on what is available.
Okay.
So it's a central pool of power that is generated, from different parts of the country, from the south, from Lagos, from the hydro and the likes, and gas-fired plants. And whatever is generated is now divided based on some formula to all of the distribution companies. So the distribution companies also distribute what they get.
Okay.
So sometimes if you notice that there is no electricity in some parts, if you used to have, and then maybe for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days you don't have, it's one of two things. Maybe you have a local problem whereby your grid is affected by some storm, or the what's it called? The transformer, is having issues, or you have a general problem. Maybe there's a collapse of the grid and you're trying to fix it.
Talking about the collapse of the grid, in the last month or two, the grid kept collapsing, and that collapse meant the economy went comatose. For an agency like yours that is supposed to give an alternative, to power, wouldn't that have been a good time to actually, come out to say these are some of the things that we can do for you, and what would some of those interventions be?
I mean, the Minister of Power then, came out and explained to Nigerians what the problem was, and it was a sabotage. A deliberate act of sabotage somewhere in, I think, the south, where they sabotaged the transmission line. And, based on that, we had to shut down and try and fix it. But it's been fixed now. And you also mentioned some of the alternatives that we are providing through the Rural Education Agency. Like we complement, the work that the distribution companies do by providing, transformers and strengthening the grid. We also provide mini grids, solar hybrid mini grids, to isolated communities.
How do you decide who gets all of this?
Well, it depends. We have various programs, right? So, for instance, under the Rural Education Fund, we have criteria for selecting sites. We allow the private investors, because what we do is to provide some sort of comfort as a way of, grants or capital subsidy.
Okay.
To incentivize the private sector to come in and invest part of their money as well. We don't provide 100% of the funding, we provide some percentage, and then they come in as well, get money from the banks or equity. They invest in rural communities. So we allow them to go and pick those rural sites. We can give them a general idea of where some of the sites are from our database for every state in Nigeria. And then they go there and choose the ones they feel they're comfortable with.
What if it's not on your database?
If it's not on our database and they come with it, it's still fine.
Okay.
So long as it's a community within Nigeria and it meets the criteria for.
What are the criteria? What's the criteria?
Okay, so for instance, if it's a completely isolated community, we like to have a safe distance away from the grid. So for instance, if the grid stops here, we like to say at least let it be 10 kilometers away or outside the grid, because it's easy for the distribution companies to come in and say they want to extend.
And you're not supposed to be seen as competitors, or what?
No, we collaborate. Okay. So for instance, we also know what their expansion plans are over the next 5 years.
Okay.
So that we don't, sort of cross each other's path. But then in some other cases, we, even within the grid, where they don't have regular supply, there's what we call the interconnected mini grids.
Okay, what does that do, and what is that about?
It's still like, if you don't have supply and you have infrastructure like the distribution lines there, you can discuss with the distribution companies to say, hey, we are going to bring in some smaller players that will generate the electricity locally using solar, backup batteries and inverter, and then inject into your local grid within that community and supply electricity to all of these people and meter all of those households.
Okay, so that kind of gives the opportunity that if people are interested, then they can come together and say, hey, this is my community, can you give us power in this place? Sure. What does that entail? What do people have to do if they're interested in something like that?
I mean, if you have your money.
When you say money, how much are we looking at on the average? If you say maybe like an estate, a small estate.
It depends. An estate in a city, requires a lot of energy. It depends on the size of the estate, how many households and what sort of equipments they use. So let's take Abuja, for instance. You have a big estate, say 400, 500 houses.
Okay.
You would require maybe 500 kilowatts or something.
Okay.
That's like half a megawatt.
Okay.
And it depends on the model you want to run. Do you want to go completely off the grid, or do you still want to complement what comes from the grid, or do you want so there are different models. Do you want to invest directly as as an estate, or do you want to call private developers that are already in this business to invest in the infrastructure, and then you just pay for the energy?
Okay.
So there are different
But
models.
if the infrastructure is available already.
Yeah, so the infrastructure for the distribution is available, but you don't get supply. But you still need to invest in the generation infrastructure.
Okay.
Energy generation. So you need to generate the power.
Power that you're going to distribute.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of the program was that 51% of Nigeria is covered with electricity, and 49. Your agency, the Rural Electrification Agency, for example, what have they done thus far, and what communities can you actually say has been covered by the organization?
Okay, so we have different programs through which we try to reach Nigerians in terms of electricity access coverage. So, for instance, the oldest of the programs is the one that everybody knows. They call it the capital projects.
Okay.
And for capital projects, every year, there's a budgetary provision from the National Assembly.
Okay.
And most of this National Assembly, the projects are generated based on the honorable members knowing what's going on within their community and the kind of requests that they get.
Okay.
So they put projects for, say, they want transformers in these communities, they want street lights in these communities. So that's what we call capital projects.
Okay.
So since 92, because the agency was created in 2005, but when it was created, all of the projects from the previous Ministry of Power, where the agency used to be housed, was transferred.
Okay, so it was like a
agency.
Department in the Ministry of Power.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So even projects as far back as 92 were handed over to the agency. So from 92, we did an assessment last year. So from 1992 to 2021, we had done 2,567 projects completed.
In what communities? Can you mention a few? Of
every part of Nigeria has witnessed projects from Nigeria. Every part, for 150 billion naira. But if you notice that between 2017, when we came on board, when we were first appointed, to 2022, 1,700 projects. That's 65% of the total.
Yeah.
The total was 2,567.
Yeah.
But we did 65% of this just from 2017 to 2021. So there is a turnaround in terms of, quick turnaround completion of projects within this period at a smaller amount. So we did 65% at 50 billion. So we did 65% of the projects at 1/3 of
what it would have cost.
Yes.
Okay, now let's take a look at the power issue in Nigeria, for example. Nigeria is blessed.
Yes.
We have solar, we have a lot of sun. The technology to create power is not rocket science. It's not new. Yes. If we're not taking advantage of the solar, we can take advantage of wind, we can take advantage, but we're still in darkness. What exactly is the challenge?
We're taking advantage of all of this, especially since we came on board in 2017. Before we came, I just mentioned one program, which is the capital program.
Okay.
But when we came in 2017, we introduced some of these technologies you've talked about, using solar, especially the solar hybrid mini grid, having solar home systems to extremely remote houses, and then also a new program that we developed called Research and Innovation Hub to try and encourage newer technologies, emerging technologies within the renewable energy space is also there. So now, looking at what we had done for the Rural Electrification Fund and the Nigeria Electrification Program, which is funded by the World Bank and African Development Bank, we've been able to provide mini grids and solar home systems to about 465,600 households. And that's if you multiply the households, that's houses, by the average number of people per household, which the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics gives at 5.
Okay.
5 people per household.
Okay.
So that means we have done around 2.3 million, or affected the lives of about 2.3
million people
just between 2017 and
2021.
Yes, and now. And then in the course of implementing this project, we are also creating jobs.
Okay.
So we've created over 3,000 jobs, MSMEs, about over 2,000 MSMEs. And in terms of capacity, we've done over 12 megawatts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I'm certain a lot of people will be interested in, and I know we've taken a look at it before, but I want us to take a look at it again. Off-grid power solutions. You are in charge of the Rural Electrification Fund, and that means that someone who's interested in possibly powering an estate, can come to you and say, give us some money, to start our own power, this thing. I'd like you to take us through that, because quite honestly, I think that if we don't address the power problem in Nigeria, we will not become a first world country, and I hope that we become that very soon. So if you have someone who says, okay, I'm interested in off-grid solutions, what is the step-by-step?
So as you know, we are a government agency. This is a public fund. So part of the fund comes from the public purse, and others, we source, from international donors and the likes. So we are bound by the Public Procurement Act of the country. So what we do, just in line with every Public Procurement Act of other agencies, when we have some money, we advertise and we say we're calling for proposal for this call. So let's say call X, and in this call, these are the requirements. You have to be a registered company in Nigeria with all of the statutory documentation. You have to have experience in providing this service. You have to demonstrate that at least you have over 3 years experience. You have done this before. You have a reference project that we can go and take a look. And then basically every other legal requirements as a company, that you are not bankrupt, all of those things. Then we evaluate whatever you've submitted. Then that's for the expression of interest. Then if you're shortlisted, then we then call for proposal from you. So the proposal will now be that, there is an estate here, it's off-grid, it meets your requirement, or it's an interconnected mini-grid. We want...
Without that initial procedure,
yes,
somebody cannot just say, okay, I'm coming to the Rural Electrification Fund, I have this project, I want to fund this place. I've been in the business. That's I want to fund this community, they don't have power, I want to do this, and I want to come to you. That's not possible.
We are hoping we'll get to that stage where we'll have enough money that you can just walk in. But because we don't have infinite amount of money, we have to do it per call, based on if we have some resources now, then we call based on the amounts that we have.
Okay. Now, recently, let me start with this. There's a telco company that provides solar provides solution for people who are interested in a pay-as-you-go service, okay, for power. And then you pay like over 3 years. Is it something that your agency can do or is interested in doing?
Yes, that's what we do with, some of the developers. They also come in, and we have different technologies. I just mentioned the solar hybrid mini-grid.
Okay, what other technologies
we have
are
the solar home systems.
Okay.
So that's what you're talking about. So they go to extremely rural communities. They give them the small boxes with, the panels on the roof. And then they say, hey, you pay over 3 years and it becomes yours.
Okay.
So they get some funding from us, and they also put in their funding.
You mentioned rural communities and you mentioned underserved.
Yes.
What about the underserved communities?
It also works for the underserved. We have a program under the Nigeria Electrification project. I mean, we try to take care of everyone that has problems with electricity.
How do people access that if they're underserved?
So if they're underserved, you have to access, through the companies. So the companies would come in, they would get the grants, and then they would go and distribute, the products to all of this. So they sell at a more cheaper rate compared to what they ought to sell it because of the grant that we're giving them.
Okay.
So,
but how? I don't know. This is particularly concerning to me because I know that I live in an underserved community and I've never heard of this part of it. And I do know that your agency has a mission to actually electrify at least 5 million homes with power.
Yeah. So that's another program funded by the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Okay.
Which is actually a loan to these developers. So we can't deal directly. Because we're a public government institution, we need to have the proper channel through which, these things are done. If we could deal directly, then maybe I could say, where is your home? okay, we'll come in to install. So we are not like we are not like ADC that does it directly.
No, you can call them NEPA until they give us power supply.
But we are more like, we work with third parties, to implement.
Okay, so that's not in your place. It's the third parties to handle that.
Yes, it's the third parties. But what we could do is, if you give us a list of some of these communities, we could draw their attention to it and say, hey, we've gotten complaints from here, from there. Why not take a look at, So this is what we'll do.
Okay, so you have quite a few people, or you have quite a number of people who are listening right now and saying, so we can draw your attention to our community that we don't have power. How do they contact you? How do they contact the agency?
It's a public agency. They can always write to us, or we're on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on. A lot of people have reached out to us through.
Now, recently there was a call to revoke the privatization of the power sector. As someone who operates in that sector, what do you think of that?
I mean, there are costs and consequences to reversing it. So, if the government has weighed the costs and they feel like the cost-benefit analysis it benefits them to do that,
okay,
well, fine. However, I know that it will not be in the interest of the government, because of how they had the kind of agreements they have signed, to just revoke it. It's also going to dent the image of the government in terms of not keeping to agreements and all of that. And this is a sector that ought to be funded by, funds, commercial funds.
Okay.
So if they are not sure what the next government would do, or if they are coming to revoke what had been signed since 2013 or thereabout, then they might not want to invest.
Okay, but then let's look at the aspect of the fact that there was a way the telecommunications sector was privatized. What went wrong in the privatization of the? Some
people felt it wasn't done properly. It should have been done in phases. Maybe privatize Abuja first, or Lagos first, or thereabout. And a lot of people feel this was just another avenue to just help, or let my people go, if you like, just help, the government's friends and all of that. So they didn't allow people that actually understood privatization and the electricity business to come in and win these bids.
Okay.
It was just done as one of those things that, you use. So there's been a lot of complaints, but I think we've moved past these complaints. We are here, the problems are here. There's no problem that doesn't have solutions.
Okay.
But for this particular problem, is a bit sensitive from my understanding of the grid.
Okay.
Because it involves a review of the tariff to a cost-reflective one.
Okay.
Which, whenever the regulator tries to do that, because of how sensitive the issue of electricity is, Nigerians, there's always an uproar, and they want to shut down. The labor people are threatening. All of those things are happening.
Okay, now let's look at the fact that you have some prepaid communities, and then you have some people who have estimated bill. I know that doesn't really fall within your purview, but being someone in power and being someone in energy, I'm sure you do have a good idea of that. In what you have is, in communities where they have many of these prepaid meters, they seem to have better power supply. And then in communities where they get estimated billing, they seem to have bad power supply. How do you explain that? Really?
I don't think it's a function of whether you're in prepaid or, if you're prepaid, it's easier for the discos to sort of forecast how much they're going to get, or there's less trouble for them in terms of logistics.
Okay.
They know that this is how many people have meters around this area. This is how much they're going to get at the end of the month. Given an average from previous disbursements. But for the estimated billing, some people also argue that the distribution companies prefer the estimated billing.
They prefer the estimated billing, but not necessarily giving more power supply to the.
That was before this new policy of the regulator that says for places that are not metered, you need to peg the amount.
Okay.
There's a policy I'm not very familiar with. My friend Ahmad Zakari, the SA Infrastructure, has been championing metering the entire country, and the distribution.
I'm talking about metering the entire company. At some point, it was said that the government actually said give everybody meters. How far has that gone?
That's what I'm saying. He's on top of it. They're coming up with different policies. They've done phase 1. I think they're going into phase 2. They are rolling out distribution meters across the country. partnering with distribution companies, and the CBN is providing some loan, towards doing this. And let's see what happens before next year. I'm sure a lot more people, and households would have more meters.
All right, this is Citizen FM 93.7, and you're listening to Talking Point on the Zuma Show. I have been speaking with Dr. Sanusi Muhammad Ohiare, who's an economist with special interest in energy. He is the executive director of the Rural Electrification Fund, and that is under the Rural Electrification Agency. It is 21 minutes to 10, and I think I want to switch it up a little bit to politics. You are a politician.
Well, I would say I'm a public servant.
In politics?
In politics, yes.
Okay. I know that you are in your mid-30s. At what age did you get into politics?
That's debatable. Because I've been in politics for as long as... I've been around politics for as long as I remember, because my dad, was actively in politics.
Okay.
Still in politics. He used to represent, my people in Kogi, in the Senate.
Okay.
And, so he's been involved in politics. So as far back as I remember, maybe 2003, 2002, I was very young then. I was probably 17, 18. I used to go for campaigns. I used to, go for rallies. I wasn't officially registered until maybe when I was 26 or thereabouts.
Okay.
With a party.
Okay.
But in terms of actually doing the politics, which involves mobilizing and influencing people, to vote or to follow a particular cause, as far back as maybe when I was 17.
So you do have young people today who feel that they have no business, getting involved in politics, and then they say politics is dirty. How come you didn't have that drawback?
Because I think I was lucky to know from childhood, from interacting with politicians and people that were serving the country in various spheres, that it's important. Politics is very important.
Why? Why is it important?
It trumps everything because it affects every aspect of our lives. So it's basically you handing over every aspect of your life to a party or to a person. So if you're not interested to know what kind of person, he is, or what kind of policies he would put in place, or how he would, sort of fight for you, then you're basically saying that you're not even in this world. I don't even know how to explain it, because if you need to be interested in what happens around you, how, for instance, we get power, what policy a government will bring in place for the rural people to have power, how, to create jobs. What are the policies for this party or this person to help us get jobs? How to galvanize the economy. You need to be interested how to secure lives and property, right? So if you're not interested in all of this and ask questions and know why, you need to be curious. It's a natural human, phenomenon. You need to just be curious about things happening, and out of curiosity, you find your one way or the other, everything leads to politics.
Until you get involved.
You have to get involved one way or another.
One way or another.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you are a technocrat in politics. You have people who are professional politicians, but we're not going to look at that now. What I want to ask you is, you're a member of the All Progressives Congress. You are the ruling party as we speak. Were you ever a member of the other party, the other major party?
No. APC was the first party I joined, but my dad used to be in the other party before we came, so yeah.
Somehow.
But not registered, though.
As at yesterday,
yes,
your party has at least, and I'm saying this conservatively, 17 presidential aspirants.
26.
Okay, 26. Because I know it's over 20, but I need to be careful. About 26 presidential aspirants, and that position is for just one person. For you as a chieftain of the party, and I dare call you that because you were a member of the convention, you were the assistant secretary of the convention at that time. As a member of the party, doesn't that worry you?
No, it doesn't.
Why?
The more, the merrier.
We're looking for one candidate.
Yeah.
And
so why don't we have an array of candidates and give Nigerians more options?
Okay, if you say that you're a politician, and I see the politician in you is out now. Okay, let's look at the fact that now your party, many had thought will give it to the south, will zone it to the south. But as it is right now, you have quite a number of people from the north central, including your governor, who's out contesting for presidency. You have the Senate president has come out and all of that. So now we're not even, and even a few days back, your chairman actually said, it was silent on the zoning issue. The APC came into power, with a lot of goodwill. And there was that, when the north finishes, it will come to the south.
Yes.
You understand? For you as a member of the party, I know you can hold brief because you're not the national publicity secretary. Doesn't that worry you?
It worries me that the PDP is trying to jeopardize this.
How is the PDP involved in this?
I'll tell you how the PDP is involved. So for us, we already have that gentleman sort of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And left for me, I personally wanted to go back to the south.
Okay.
Because that's only fair. And, these are people that have supported the North, to emerge. And they've worked hard for the party and they've stayed in the party. It's only natural for it to go back there. But what we are hearing, and this is why you see a lot of people are also picking forms from both sides, is that the PDP are trying to play a fast one and zone it to the North or give a northern candidate.
Okay.
And if you do this, then as a party, you need to sit down and analyze and review.
Okay.
What are the strengths? Where are the votes? What are the sentiments involved?
Okay.
If the PDP picks a northern candidate and we pick a southern candidate, what are our odds? What are the odds against us? Can we win? So when the party starts to do all of this analysis and calculations, not out of their volition, but because of what an opponent...
And because you want to stay in power. But then they say that, my people say that if you have done well, then it should make you happy. Is it that your party is not too sure of how well they have done in the last few years?
It's not about just doing well. We've done our bit. We've tried our best. I just reeled out some of our achievements from my own agency alone.
Which is a microcosm.
Exactly. But, in politics, sentiment is a very big part of politics. You can't rule it out, unfortunately, especially in this part. So sentiments comes to play. It's no longer about what you've done. And in the heat of the moment, in terms of politics, when everything is heated up, just a few days to election, anything can change.
Yeah.
It could just bring out one slogan or one sentiment and everybody follows the bandwagon. And before you know, you've lost election.
Your party did it in Kwara State, Otoge.
Yes. And we won.
Oh, yeah, you won. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about, so sentiment plays a very big part. So we need to be careful.
Let me take you to the trending story. Your party has a central bank governor now in the party. How does that work for the rest of Nigeria?
So for the rest of Nigeria, I don't...
No. if the CBN governor, has now
There's
said...
a lot of hue and cry over this. To be honest, I don't know what I feel about it. I don't know what the CBN Act says, but I know that as a public servant and appointee of government, you have the right to belong to a party, you have the right to belong to a trade union, a group, but I understand the moral burden behind a CBN governor who is in charge of the economy, and the CBN is seen as a corporate body, as highest professionals, and all of those things, But we've had a CBN governor that has left and gone on to become a governor of another state.
After several years.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think we'll just wait and see what the courts
how it
say.
pans out.
Yeah. This is the first. That's why you see a lot of people. Well, I think people expected that he should have just focused on trying to get us out of the doldrums in terms of what we find ourselves in the economy. And you can't rule out politics also coming in. A lot of people take it as an advantage and say all sorts of things. But even some of the prominent members of APC have come out to condemn this. So that means if I were him, I would take a second look. He's eager to serve his people. He has been serving in this capacity. He feels he wants to do better. Personally, you can't deny him that right.
That right.
But professionally, and what is obtainable within the law, he needs to, if he wants to really do that. People are saying he should resign. He probably has to resign. I don't know. But the laws are very clear, and I'm sure that it will prevail. The laws
at the end of the day. Okay, my last question on politics to you.
You didn't allow me finish all of the works that we are doing. We are
don't worry, we'll go.
We are providing electricity to universities. We are providing to hospitals. So many places. But it's politics you want to talk about.
Continue. Okay, the last question on politics, and then we'll go back to your electrification. Okay. Ex-President Goodluck Jonathan, a form was bought for him under the APC.
Well, he denied it. He said
yes, but we didn't know that he had become a member of your party. You didn't tell us.
I didn't know too.
Oh, it's news to you.
It's news to me.
Let's go back to the electrification part. So tell us some of the other things your agency has done thus far.
Okay, so for when we came on board, the president approved the program, for us to provide electricity to about 37 universities.
And how many of them have you covered?
We've done 9 based on the funding that we have. We are working on another 8 in terms of procurement, and another 8 which is phase 3, and then
So if we look at the 9 that you have done, what universities are those?
We've done Barrow University, Kano. We've done Nnamdi Azikiwe University. Is it Nsukka?
Nnamdi Azikiwe University in Nsukka. No, Oka.
Oka, yes, Oka. We've done Makurdi, University of Agriculture.
Okay.
We've done the one in Bauchi, ATBU. We've done the one in Sokoto.
Okay.
That's Usman Danfodio
University
in Sokoto. We've done one. The first one we commissioned was in Ebonyi.
Okay.
In Tufe Aliki Federal University, Funai. They call it Funai.
Okay.
Then we've also commissioned the one in Fupre, Delta.
So that means that these universities that you have mentioned, they are fully, they have electricity 247.
Yes. Fully electrified. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah. So So all of those universities we have.
Okay, what about hospitals? Because I know that
we've done. So we're also doing some teaching hospitals, like in phase 2. You'd see that some universities also have teaching hospitals that are different or apart. So we're doing the teaching hospitals. I think about 7 teaching hospitals that we'll be doing as well. And we're also doing smaller hospitals, especially when COVID was ravaging, the entire world. We quickly started implementing projects, smaller systems in primary health centers.
Okay, now those ones that you're doing, is it directly under the electrification agency? Because you mentioned that the underserved communities and the others, you have to interface with people who are interested.
This one is directly.
Okay.
No, we didn't. Our staff would only monitor and ensure that everything is done per spec, but we still used developers and contractors to implement the projects.
Okay.
So we still need to advertise and all of those things. So we've done over 200 primary health centers. This small, giving them about 10 kVAs, for all of them. For all those,
in how many states?
All over the states, 36 states.
All the 36 states you
FCT,
do have?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we made sure that we, shared it accordingly.
Of the 5 million solar power solar power projects that you have decided to, how many have you been able to work on?
So that program, like I told you, we've done over 2-point-something million people.
Yes.
Households now. But there's a new program that is 5 million home solar systems.
I saw that.
So that one is the one that the CBN is providing funding for.
Okay.
But because of some of the criteria for accessing this fund is been a bit slow. I think it's just one or two companies that have now accessed some monies and they've started deploying. As at the last count, we know that they're doing over 100,000 solar home systems for that one company.
Okay.
But we're hoping that other companies are able to quickly meet up with the criteria.
Okay. Now, I know that all of what we have said, what the question on the minds of the average Nigerian will be, give us power. If Nigeria was to have power, constant power, at least 12 hours a day, per day, what do we need to do as a people, as citizens, as the government?
Citizens, as government, we know what we need to do. But as citizens, ready for it. It will involve the tariff to become cost reflective. if it's cost, it's very simple, right? See what we're doing in the villages. As rural as these communities are, they are more credit-worthy than most people in the cities. And that's a fact. And guess what? Because it's a small system that you put there, it doesn't enjoy economies of scale. It is more expensive for those rural people.
Yeah.
But the saving grace is that they don't consume as much energy as we consume in the cities. So they pay higher per kilowatt hour than we pay in the cities. And these guys pay 99% of the time. But if you want to increase tariff in Nigeria within the grid to a cost-reflective one, you know what always happens. So government is forced to continue to pay subsidies and
so what you're saying is that the magic wand to improving power supply in Nigeria is to increase the tariffs, and we will have power.
I didn't say increase.
Oh, okay.
Please, Kemi, don't quote me. Allow forces of demand and supply to determine a cost-reflective tariff. What does cost-reflective tariff entails? I need to buy gas. We know the cost of gas. I need to transmit. We know the cost of transmitting. I need to generate. We know the cost of generating power. All of this comes into what forms the tariff. So if I put all of this together and the tariff is, say, 70 naira, and then because we are currently paying maybe 50 something or 40 something, and I say, okay, let's allow the cost reflective tariff to play, and people will say, oh, you have increased tariff. No, that's not increase of tariff, because government is still paying the balance as subsidy to augment, because if government does not pay, the gas suppliers will shut down. And because it's so sensitive, electricity generation and transmission, the business of having light is very sensitive, that if they shut down for one day, it's a problem. So government continues to pay.
So is it a gap in the orientation? Is it a gap? Because
I don't know, it's just a cultural thing. We've been used to getting free, especially those of us within the city, because I keep making examples with those in the rural areas. Maybe one of these days we take you to one of our rural mini grids in the rural area. They are paying. They have meters. They pay. They vend. Sometimes if they don't have money, the developers have devised a very good way. They can even sell their produce. Get over maybe 6 months if they know that. Maybe the farming season is in the next 6 months. Whatever they have now, they sell and buy for the next 6 months. So there are innovative ways that the developers have used
created to actually.
But they are paying. But in the cities, we go on strike. Labor starts, protest. Everybody.
You are in labor house. Dr. Ohiare, you are in labor house. I'm just reminding you. But then a very big thank you to you. Thank you for letting me veer into politics a little bit. That was important for me. Thank and thank you for being our guest today on the program. We wish you well with the Rural Electrification Agency. We hope that Nigeria will get lit up so that we can have more industries pick up and, even small businesses do the business that they can, so that people can have better purchasing power. Electricity is extremely important, to any growing nation. Dr. Sanusi Ohiare, thank you so much once again for being a part of Talking Point this morning.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to hosting you some other time, and we wish you all the best. Politics, just a little bit. Are we expecting you to contest in 2023?
But I'm already serving. I'm serving.
Oh, so
I just got my second term.
The CBN governor is serving.
Well,
Have you bought your expression? Have you bought your expression of interest form?
I haven't bought, and nobody's buying anything on my behalf. So I feel this job is really important, and I'm giving it all my best. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, thank you so much once again for being a part of the Talking Point. Of course, you do know that on CitizenFM 93.7, it is all about what the citizens can do to have a better nation. For the wealth of the nation, rests on the shoulders of the citizen. I am Kemi. Thank you for listening to Talking Point. And I apologize for not opening the phone lines today. I really, really apologize. Now, Patrick, don't cut off my head. And Udohutu, I am sorry. Don't worry. Mr. Lawrence is coming, and I'm sure he will open the phone lines. At 10 o'clock, we'll bring you the news on the hour. And afterwards, it will be time for Insight with Lawrence Umoite, as he brings on Chief Edwin Clark via phone to discuss pertinent political issues on the station. All right, I'll be back in a bit with the news on the hour. Thank you for listening once again.
CitizenFM Abuja.